Knowing this is gonna save you so many games, especially in Blitz. Knight versus 7th rank pawn. Okay, guys. So what do you think? How is this? Now we're adding some pawns. The rook is gone, guys. It is white to move right now. And we can see that this pawn is going to promote very soon, yeah? So what do you need to do? You need to keep the defense of this pawn. This king is up here, so this king will never be able to do anything about it. So what you do is that you go knight over here, okay? You need to keep the defense. If you're able to sack this knight for the pawn, then it's a draw. So now if the king wants to go ahead and attack the knight, they go king c2. Now we need to still keep the defense of this pawn. What we do in this position is that we go for this check. If you go king c1, then nothing happens. You can just bring the king in because we're stopping the promotion of this pawn. If king d3, we go knight d1. You just basically dance around like this. Knight f2 also looks fine. Yeah, it's here. Okay, you can just go here. It's alright. You can just do something like this and then just bring the knight f2 is better because this, or knight b2 or whatever, because knight is further away from the king, so it's gonna take longer for the king to attack it, and you have more, you have more time to bring this king in. Basically, you just gotta move your knight and still defend this square, basically. Now, this is what happens if the knight is able to get in front of the pawn, right? But what happens, people, if the knight is not able to get in front of the pawn? What would happen in a position like this? How do you think that this is, everybody? It is white to move here. So, it's important to go ahead and take this knight and have it control this square of promotion. It's white to move. So what you do here is that you go knight e2 check. Okay? This is the moment we dance around. The king can go to two places that are scary to attack this knight. If the king goes this way, it doesn't matter. We just bring the king up and the knight is defending. If knight d1, and that is the whole idea of this, is that you go knight c3. And after king c1, you go knight a2. You dance around like this. Bam, 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 bam. You go like this, okay? This is what happens if the king stays on the first rank. What happens if king d2? This looks a bit more tricky, right? Because there is no knight c3 anymore. And this knight is going to be forced to leave the protection of this square. The knight cannot go anywhere. This is the scariest part. And now it's really important to know the idea of going knight d4, guys. This move is actually controlling the c1 promotion. Because after black makes a queen over here, there is knight b3 check winning the queen. That is really important to know. So what happens if something like, king d3? Then you just go knight b3. If you go here, we are back, and now, now we're in the same other position. We just go to the side. We want to defend this from the side just because it's a lot easier. I'm kidding. We could just take the pawn. Yeah. Just a prank. Just a prank. So this is the initial position. So this, if king b2, we're looking at king d2. If king b2, then guys, this is important. King d2, we have this to go for this fork. King b2, we have knight here to go for this fork. The important thing to take is that the knight can always defend, but you just need to find where all these checks are. So this is now black to move, everybody. So actually, there's a rule, and I want you all to write it down. Remember it. When facing a 7th rank knight's pawn, aka B or G pawn, because this is where the knight's pawns are, the knight cannot succeed unless it stands in front of a pawn. So after b2, everybody, so 2nd, 7th rank, it's the same thing. When facing a 7th rank knight's pawn, the knight cannot succeed unless it stands in front of the pawn. This knight is not standing in front of the pawn, so actually this is winning for black. The idea is that after knight d2, there's king c1. If king c2, there might be knight c4 with the same idea of going for this fork. But there's king c1, guys. Because now, after knight b1, knight b3 check, this is the idea. Oh yeah, this is really beautiful. After king d1, we don't have knight a2. We don't, if the pawn was over here, our knight could go over here. But now there's no square to jump to, This knight can't jump anywhere, and we cannot stop the promotion of this. So this only applies for B and G pawns. If the position was this, with the same, setup, then we would have knight a2, and this would be a draw. Do you see the difference? So whenever the pawn is on the 2nd or 7th rank, and the knight does not stand in front of the pawn, aka the king is over here, there's a knight in front of it, then, the pawn wins. There you go. I'm going to remember it forever. All right, so let's go ahead and see this position over here, what we have. So now there's going to be the same for both H and A pawns. There are 3 categories of pawns, guys. There's the A and H pawns. There's the B and G pawns. And there's all the pawns in the middle. All these pawns are pretty much equal. But, you know, these are all different. It's black to move. There's no queen happening because it's check, guys. It's a check. If they would have gone king D3, then there is actually just knight G3. And this is just going to be a dead draw. The idea of this move, guys, is that if king E3, there's knight F1 check, and we're winning this pawn. So we're actually creating a barrier. Now this king cannot get through this barrier, you know? And if something like, you know, king, I don't know, king D4, I guess that we just go king D6, and once again, the king cannot get through. The king needs to get through to support this pawn, but the king cannot get through. Beautiful, right? So you go knight G3 to create the barrier. But let's say if they go king C2 instead, just in this position, just because they know about the barrier. You know, we're playing in someone really smart. They know about this barrier. They go king C2 instead. What do you do then? You go knight G3 again. Knight F2 actually loses due to king D2. You gotta have your knight on G3. It's really important to have it over here. Because if knight F2, then there's just king D2, and this king is just gonna get this. So yeah, I just want to illustrate that if you went knight F2 instead, if you have a knight H1, yeah, I believe that you just go here, and after this, there's just this, and after this, you go here, and there's no way of stopping this. So, let's go back to this position. So yeah, king C2, knight G3, really important move to go knight G3. King D1, the king goes down. So now we got king D6, so we just bring the king up. If the king gets over here, you know, no problem. Then we have everything under control. So if the king comes in, then there's going to be no issue for white. So we want to bring the king in. And then king E1, you know, the king continues on this path. King E5. And now, guys, we are in time. Whenever king F2, there's king F4, and we're in time. Now, king G2 doesn't matter, you know. You just go king whatever, king G4, etc., etc. See, guys, when a pawn is in the H or A file, the idea is that the king needs to come in to protect the knight. You know, the knight cannot do all the job by itself. Beautiful. So that's that. This is the only time a knight can win. It's when there's a knight and a pawn. A knight versus a king can never checkmate. But if there is a pawn involved, then there could be a checkmate. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that. There we go. Guys, this pawn is gone. It's white to move right now. I saw somebody saying knight d4. Knight d4 is not accurate. Why is knight d4 not accurate? Because after knight d4, black can either go king a2 or a2. You go knight c1 because the only legal move of the position is to go a2. Now there's no king a2. This is the only legal move. And then there's knight b3 checkmate. So this is kind of cool. I think we've gone through all the knight and pawn in games now, guys.